This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, episode 710, 5 Ways to Be Kind Right Now, with Houston Kraft. Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, hosted by author, educator, speaker, and mom, the Cool Cat teacher, Vicki Davis. A kind word in today's classroom can be as refreshing as a cup of cool water. It can also unknowingly save someone's life. Today, Vicki is joined by fellow kindness advocate, Houston Kraft. Houston is a public speaker, curriculum developer, and co-founder of CharacterStrong.com, a revolutionary curriculum and training program that is transforming the way schools teach social-emotional learning, character education, and, of course, kindness. You may have seen his face on your Lays potato chip bag. He was awarded that distinguished position for being someone who helps spread smiles. We're excited about his brand new book called Deep Kindness. And you may be surprised that while you think you're being kind to somebody, actually there's more to it than that. So let's get right into it. Enjoy!
Today we're talking with Houston Kraft of CharacterStrong.com and the author of Deep Kindness, which has just come out in September of 2020. Now, Houston, this is such a challenging time. And I know you've talked about kindness for a while, but you have 5 ways that we can be kind right now during all of this COVID challenges. So where do we start?
Good question, Vicki. Kindness is a passion of mine. I think it is more relevant than it's ever been before. And I like to start by figuring out, okay, well, what is a thing based on what it's not? That's number one. And to me, kindness is not niceness, which I think the two are often confused, especially in schools. I've had a chance to speak in 600 schools, doing assemblies and workshops, and CharacterStrong works with 2,500 schools. And so the poster I see most often is throw kindness around like confetti, which I think is well-intentioned, but I think it does damage in the sense that when we think about something like confetti, or when people have that narrative that kindness is free, I feel like that damages or devalues how hard kindness actually is. Kindness costs something. Kindness costs us time or energy. Real deep kindness costs us comfort and convenience. I heard a kid in Texas, he said, I listened to your assembly and I realized that I'm a nice person, but I'm not a kind person. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, nice is reactive. Do it if I like you, if I agree with you, or if I get your number or something like that. He goes, but kindness is proactive. It requires me to make time for the practice. It requires me to show you goodness, even if you don't make me feel good, which leads to number 2 when it comes to practicing kindness, which is boundaries are important. Dr. Brené Brown has interviewed thousands of people, and she says, what's fascinating, even a little counterintuitive, is that the most compassionate people are also the most boundaried, which means they say no to a lot of things so that their yeses are that much more rich, which leads a little bit to the self-care conversation, which as educators or just people in general, we need a whole lot more of right now. So I think it's interesting, number 2 in kindness, to recognize that we can say no a lot so that our yeses are honest and authentic, and we do those things with true joy as opposed to out of obligation.
I love that. And, kindness is also not compliance. And I had mentioned something about kindness this weekend on Twitter, and people were saying it's not okay to be kind if you're being mistreated. Kindness is not compliance in the face of injustice. I mean, if someone's being treated unjustly, it's not, be kind and keep your mouth shut. That's not the same thing, is it?
No, kindness is fierce and intense and will stand up in the face of injustice. True kindness isn't passive, I think because of that, it's free or it's confetti narrative. I think sometimes we mistake that passiveness for kindness, but I think real compassion looks like getting into the mess, right? It acknowledges the problem and goes after, championing the solution. So yeah, compliance is not compassion. Kindness looks like standing up, especially when it's least convenient.
And kind people tell the truth. They just do. And they have a way to tell the truth. So what's our third, Houston?
Yeah, number 3 is to acknowledge what gets in the way. I think kindness first and foremost looks like self-reflection, which is to say, what prevents me from being kind? Is it that sometimes, I'm doing it out of compliance or obligation? What we know through Dr. Michelle Borba, who wrote the amazing book Unselfie, she says in 30 years of researching empathy, the biggest barriers are anxiety, fear, and narcissism. And you realize that makes sense. When anxiety goes up, she says, empathy goes down. The more worried I am about what's going on in my world, the harder time I have thinking about what's going on in yours. And I think we have to acknowledge that anxiety's gone up for students consistently for the past many decades, and we've seen a parallel drop in empathy. So we look around the world right now, anxiety is not just increasing in young people, it's anxiety and fear are increasing in all of us. And so that's why, for me, I think that couching the idea of self-care and contextualizing it is important for me, because I have such a hard time escaping the narrative that self-care is selfish, even though we know it's not. But for me, it's recognizing that when I'm taking care of myself, what I'm really doing is regulating my emotions enough to make the available space to see beyond myself.
And self-care is so important. I found this incredible chart where you chart like sleep and how much water you drink and all these kinds of things. But then you also plot your mood and your energy level. And I have found that the day after I exercise and drink enough water and all of that, my mood is always 4 or 5 points higher. So if I want to be a teacher who is in a more positive mood, handles stress better, and can be kinder in my response to challenges, I'm going to get my rest. My husband once told me when I was not getting rest just recently, you are the only one who can put your head on the pillow. Which that's just true, isn't it, Houston?
Yeah, we got to take ownership for ourselves first, but that's usually the last thing on our to-do list. But well said.
Okay, what's our fourth?
Fourth is we're talking habits. Dr. Charles Duhigg in his book, Power of Habit, he says that 45% of our day is routine, which is a little horrifying, but true when you realize how much of our day is habitual. And to me, that statistic reminds me that I think it's, again, an unintentionally damaging narrative to have something like a kindness week at our school, because that becomes transactional. It implies in some way we can get it done in a week. And I think that the bigger impact always when it comes to kindness is going to be 1% shift over time, right? Consistency is everything. And the example I'd give is my mom, who wrote a note in my lunchbox every day, kindergarten through 12th grade. And you think about, in the moment, that writing of that note, small, simple, 2-3 minutes maybe. But it's the aggregate, right? It is the collective action over time. It is the consistency of that when she didn't have the time, when she protected the time to make sure she got it done anyways. To me, that is deep kindness, right? It's this ongoing disciplined practice of a thing that adds up. So can we shift our habits even 1%? I love that 45% stat because it gives me a framework to say if 45% of my day is routine, have I designed even 1% of my day to be kind?
I love it. And there's a guy named Tim Challies who has a great productivity book. And in there, he talks about, do you serve and surprise your family? Because sometimes that surprise is what really makes people go, oh, wow, that was so awesome. And I have that as a habit on my habit tracker. Am I serving and surprising people? Did I surprise somebody today in some way? But yeah, making it a habit, you think differently when you're intentionally trying to be kind, don't you?
Absolutely. It changes the framework with which you think about something like kindness. You can have the habitual discipline piece, and then you can have that surprise piece, the surprise and delight. And those two things aren't mutually exclusive, which I love.
So I'm curious, before we go on to number 5, what's your kindness habit for someone in your family?
I got 2 big ones. Organizationally, we have character goals that we check in on week in and week out. And we get to set those, and we have accountability partners to drive that forward. The one that I adopted a few quarters ago in our company that stuck with me is I send at least 3 "this reminds me of you" texts per week. So that's a song, it's a video, that's a picture from a memory that comes up in my Facebook or Time Hop or whatever. So if I see something that reminds me of someone, I send them that message. That's a surprise one.
I love that. I feel like do that tomorrow. Yeah.
Isn't that good? Then the one that's more consistent would be this kid and I, who I met at a speaking engagement. We do a daily check-in, 1 to 5. How you doing? So if it's a 3 or 4, it's typically we're cool. We just get that little quick momentary emotional snapshot. But if he's at a 5 or he's at a 1, it gives us an opportunity to have a deeper conversation. That one's my more daily practice.
Oh, I love these examples. That's fantastic. Okay, what's our 5th?
5th is how do we make time for that which is most important, which is to say that the most precious resource we have, of course, time, and the most frustrating, probably ubiquitous barrier for compassion is busyness, especially for adults, but more and more so for young people. So the strategy I'd offer is if you're a to-do list person, which all of us have a mental one or a physical one. But if you got a physical one and you write things down, right above your to-do list, Write a 1 item, maybe 2 if you're feeling excited, to be list. Who do I want to be today amidst all the productivity that I have to do? Still got work to do, don't get me wrong, but most of the time, when we get busy or overwhelmed, something like kindness or gratitude or presence or service, it falls to the bottom of the to-do list, unless we intentionally reprioritize it and make it so it's at the top. So I offer that to-be list, and it might be like, today I want to be kind, and make it actionable, right? 5 minutes or less, I'm going to surprise, my husband with a new pillow set for us to put our heads down on tonight. Whatever that thing is, right? An opportunity to put our time where we say we value something.
So as we finish this, fill in the blank. During this challenging time, I hope we don't forget to blank. And you can't put the word be kind.
I hope we don't forget to hope.
That's a good one. So his name is Houston Kraft. The organization is CharacterStrong at CharacterStrong.com. And his new book is Deep Kindness. Thank you, Houston.
Absolutely, Vicki. Talk again soon.
If you enjoyed today's 10-Minute Teacher podcast, subscribe on iTunes. You can also catch up with Vicki on Twitter at CoolCatTeacher or level up and learn with her blogs and free resources at CoolCatTeacher.com. Thanks for listening.